Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. I am so glad that you have decided to be my guest again this Friday. It is a great Friday because today I have as my guest a man that you will know. For the first time ever on my podcast, I'm not worried about keeping the conversation going because this guy can talk. You've heard him talk on Bassmaster Live. What's really cool about this guy is that on his Facebook page, his first moniker is not journalist. It's not video guy. It's not Bassmaster Live guy. It could be all of those. His first deal, follower of Christ. Yes, today we have Bassmaster Live's Ronnie Moore is going to be on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. Welcome back, everybody, to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. I have as my guest today the one and only Bassmaster Live guy, Ronnie Moore. Ronnie, welcome to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, my friend.
I'm glad to be on it, man. I'm super excited that you started this, and it's been cool seeing all the different guests you've had on and the aspects that you tackle with it. But I mean, I guess I'm the one and only because I'm Ronnie Moore at Bassmaster Live, but I'm Ronnie the third, actually. So there are plenty of others floating around that have my name that could totally be, doing some mischievous things. But yeah, I'm the only Ronnie on Bassmaster Live right now.
Lots of Ronnies. I know, I was going to name, my son is named Wesley James, but all of his predecessors were James Wesley. And so I kind of switched it over on him. I didn't want him to be like the fourth or whatever he was going to be. So, well, man, we're glad that you're here. It is so exciting because we had you back at my church right before the Classic at Brushy Creek Baptist. And man, my pastor is still talking about that. He is still jacked up, and saw a bunch of people come to Christ and a bunch of people. I walked into church yesterday, and a kid ran up to me and said, "Man, when are you bringing the Bassmaster guys back?" And so it was pretty cool. And I'm packing up for Lake Fork. I'm leaving in the morning, and I guess that you will be. Do you do live in your studio at your home, or what do you guys do?
No, I'm our studio at work where I go every single day and edit videos and whatnot. That is about 15 minutes from the house. So I'll just go up there. I'm in the home studio right now because, hey, it's 5 o'clock Central Time. I'm trying to be home around 5 o'clock with a newborn, a 2-month-old. So I'm trying to get home as early as I can from work, but they've been great. So yeah, no, the studio is about 15 minutes from the house, and I'll be in studio with Tommy and Such. Mark Zona will be at his remote location in Michigan. And then we'll have Dave and Davey obviously on site there at Lake Fork, enjoying the heat and the big bass that'll be coming through this week. So, but yeah, like you mentioned, the last time we got to hang out, and the only time we get to hang out really anymore, is at the Classic when everyone comes together. And I had such a good time at your church speaking and with the group of angler panel that you had there. I even got a photo so the National Professional Fishing League went to Lake Hartwell a few weeks ago. Right. And so like a month or two after the Classic. And one of the main contributors there, one of the, the investors and one of the sponsors, was at one of their get-togethers, and he took a photo of this little kid who had a hat that was signed by me, and there would be only one place it would happen, and it was at the get-together and the faith and fishing night at your church. So I appreciate it. It's super cool, and awesome. Just privileged to be a part of this. So thanks for having me on today.
Man, I love it. I tell you, I'm just jacked. I mean, the Zona gets to be in the remote studio. I just kind of imagine him like jerking smallmouth like 2 minutes before it's time for him to get on, and he's like, I gotta go out there. So I know the smallmouth got to be killing it up there where he is. And so I'm very jealous, but hey, we're going to start off this. I'm just going to shoot some questions at you at the end of this deal. I'm going to get you to imitate a Bass Pro. So you got to get ready. I didn't prepare you for that, but you got to be thinking of the guy that you want to do. I know you're great off the cuff, but right. I remember you as the Bass Track guy. Okay. When I first started with Bassmaster and I got in there, you were like the guy that would show me how to do the Bass Track stuff. Tell us how in the world you got involved with Bassmaster and all the things that you do with Bassmaster Live. Just tell us the story, man. We'd love to hear it.
So my I guess career testimony, as it is, because we all have our story and most testimonies are about our faith. But when it comes to my work testimony, you know, everybody's fortunate at a certain point. Everybody gets a break, and everybody gets an opportunity they maybe do or do not deserve, and you have to capitalize on it. And so I was an avid fisherman in high school, especially after I realized I wasn't going to go to the NBA, and I realized that I wasn't that I wasn't going to play high school basketball anymore when I broke my ankle. And so I really invested a lot more time into fishing. When I got to college, I chose my school. I chose East Carolina over there in Greenville, North Carolina. I chose East Carolina, and I wanted to be a pirate because they had my degree field, which was communications, and they also had a fishing team. And so that was my pathway into the sport of fishing on a national level, was competing in college. And really, it's the biggest cliche, yet the most true statement ever. You have no idea who is watching you when you are doing your thing. You know what I'm saying? Like they say that character is what you do when no one's watching. Well, in bass fishing, you can have a lot of people know who you are and you don't even know that they're paying attention. And that's what happened in college. Whether I fished, I had like 7 different partner combinations. I fished with 6 different guys and I fished by myself. So I fished all kinds of events that I could, got as many opportunities as possible. And man, whether it was Bill Carson of Humminbird, Hank Weldon, college director, the different Yamaha and Mercury folks, like it didn't matter who it was, the admins on the crew, Emily Hand, who does Bassmaster social media as of late, she was just a tournament admin that checked us in and registered us and made so many friends and left so many opportunities. And then even once photographer there, Shea Baker, he recognized me as well. And I think so long story short, I got my opportunity because Shea needed help. He became a GoPro innovator with fishing and needed help doing the bass track portion of that. So you only have limited time at the takeoff to get bass track and to get GoPros on. So we got to tag team that, but he asked me and I talked to Jim Sexton about it. I was a junior in college. So I hadn't even applied. And I tell my wife that all the time, like if I retire in 40 years or in 70 years, because we work in the fishing industry, if I retire in 70 years, I would have done so without ever applying for my dream jobs. And so I got asked to be a part of the bass crew and do bass track because they saw that I was a positive, excited person for the sport, I guess, well-spoken on the stage and just had the drive to it. And it worked out. My degree field was right there in journalism and communication. So got the opportunity with bass track. I stuck my foot in the door, missed some classes, had to drop out of some classes, had to take online classes, but I was not going to let that door shut. And so my foot was actually big enough to stay in that door for a little while, did a senior year online. And then while managing my athletic jobs there, because I did video for the athletics at ECU, and I also was the sports editor for the newspaper there.
Wow.
So where I kind of juggled it all, but it all contributed to, I'd say everything that I just mentioned contributed to my success now, other than the actual classes at school. No offense to college, but there's no one in the world that can teach you how to write a story or how to shoot video other than you just doing it. Doing it gets you great hands-on experience. So I worked for 2 seasons on the Elite Series before I graduated. And halfway through my year, I actually missed Lake Havasu for my graduation. I kind of regret that to this day because that was such a cool event that I got to watch from afar. I wish I was there.
It was cool. Yeah.
Such a cool area. And so I hope we go back someday. 2016, at the end of 2015, I started to do more because my schedule was freed up. Half the season, I started taking photos more. I started being on the water, not just bass track. And then 2016 was my like go get it year, fully out of school from start to finish. I did like 35 of the 42 Bassmaster events. I did like every event except for the nation that year. I remember driving from Mille Lacs for the last Elite of the year, the AOI championship, and driving to Lake Champlain. And I had to be there in a day and a half. And it's a 24-hour drive without stops. And so it was hard to get there, but I remember all those different things. And at the end of 2016, I got a call from Steve Bowman, who dealt with the tournament crew at the Elites and the .com portion of it. And he said, hey, be ready because Little Rock or Birmingham may give you a call and extend a full-time offer to you in some form or fashion. And so I was ready. And that was about Halloween. And because I remember I was fishing Smith Lake on Halloween with some buddies. And I remember from Halloween to the middle of December, like, wow, Bowman punked me. They have not called. And it's been a month and a half. Like, what's going on? Then December, I think it was December 16th, came around, and Mike McInnes and Steve Bowman called me, and they extended an offer to be the video guy for the website, to help produce all the video content for Bassmaster.com, and then to be a part of Bassmaster Live. And so I was prepped for that whole video editing aspect. Like, I was like, oh yes, this is what I want to do. This is awesome. I'm gonna be a part of that. I had no idea that would become secondary in my preference so quick, and that I would love Bassmaster Live as much as I have. And so I became an accessory to the show, and now I've really enjoyed it from 2017, my first year there, to 2022. It's been, next season will be my 10th year working with Bassmaster in some form. So 28 years old, and I've got my opportunity really early on. And I really realized a lot of lessons that we can obviously get into later, but I realized 2017 was such a fun year, but a year of so much change, moving from North Carolina to Arkansas, moving my wife from, she was born in a hospital that was 10 minutes from her house where she lived her whole life. And I moved her to Arkansas, and the lessons that we learned there, not only managing married life, which we had gotten married at the end of 2016 or the middle of 2016, all kinds of stuff. And so we learned so much stuff in 2017, and I learned about my identity as a commentator and how I could not imitate Tommy Sanders and Mark Zone. I had to figure out who I was, because 2017 was a struggle of like, I could be so much better, but every time the camera comes on, something just messes with me. And so I obviously got rid of that real quick, but it took. And you did,
and that's some tall cotton right there. You just got to be honest. I mean, with Zone, Tommy Sanders, I mean, good night, man. And then you got Davey Hyde over there in the color commentary. I mean, that's a pretty intimidating, field of people. But man, I tell you what, Bassmaster Live wouldn't be Bassmaster Live without Ronnie Moore. And I am, you don't know this about me, but people, when I was growing up in high school, I was the most competitive human being that you'll ever see in your life, but I will not let myself get into fantasy fishing. I can't do it, man. But I tell you, I want to so bad. I want to jump in so bad, but I follow you guys, and it's so awesome to watch you. And man, I know that you got Fork coming up, and we're going to have it this week, and this podcast will actually air this week. So who you got? What's the fantasy football pick, man? I mean, the fantasy fishing pick you got there. I mean,
man, we just went through that with our Bassmaster podcast that'll air tomorrow as well. So these podcasts will drop at the same time, but ours was specifically fantasy related. And I didn't pick Lee Livesey for one of my teams because 2/3 of the population is picking him. And it's like, do you pick the favorite? Do you not pick the favorite? All I know is that it's got to take over 100 pounds, and it's going to be a different, if you tuned in and you love big bass, that's awesome. But if you're tuning in and you want to see something different than Lake Fork the last few years, you will, because the lake is about 5 to 5.5 feet low. It's been low all year. So this isn't all of a sudden, it's been 7 to 8 feet low and slowly came up. But it should be post spawn. I mean, Chris, I'm in Arkansas, and I fished on Good Friday, and it was 56-degree water temperature. Then I fished last Thursday. So like 3 weeks from Good Friday to last Thursday, and it was 80-degree water temp. So in 3 weeks, 21 days, it went up 24 or 25 degrees. So it went from pre-spawn to the fish on the bed and post-spawn so quick in this, Arklatex region. And so it should be fully post-spawn in Texas. We should see some big bass. And really, I'm looking for a Keith Combs. It's been a struggle for him this season, out of the norm. He's down there in bucket E of fantasy. And if you haven't gotten into it, that is the bottom 20 for the Angler of the Year standings. And that's not somewhere he's lived frequently. So I'd expect him to really catch him this week. It's in his wheelhouse. Lake Fork, as always, he's had some really good finishes here over the last couple elites, but he had really, really good finishes and wins in the Toyota Texas Bass Classic events here at Lake Fork over the years prior to that. And most of the time those were in the summer or fall, and they were offshore events. And a lot of our events at Fork have been April and early May. So those fish have been on the bank still. With it being late May, I expect them to be out farther, and Keith Combs to be one to watch. And some of those guys who just love cranking, some of those Tennessee River guys, they know how to graph for 4 straight days. And I will honestly say I'll watch out for those forward-facing sonar guys, because I would like to see what some of these fish, when they get off the bank and they're in their summer haunts, you know how it is. Those fish are beat up, they're tired, they're looking for an easy meal. Oftentimes when fish are beat up and highly pressured, they suspend a lot. And what happens when they suspend? Man, they're hard to catch, other than with forward-facing sonar, where you can see them and at least have more high efficiency casts. And so Patrick Walters, Justin Hamner, some of those guys, David Mullins, I'd expect some of those guys to be able, Austin Felix. Those are some guys that I'm thinking about this week to catch them.
Man, I say I like those picks. I like all of those that you mentioned. Buddy Gross is another one I think that might be a sleeper in, that kind of situation. I always look out for my man Clifford Perch. You never know what Perch is going to do. And Perch is really having a year. So I'm probably going to, I don't believe in jinxing, but I'm not going to say it.
Hey, I said on the podcast, so teaser there, if you haven't listened to that, but after you finish listening to the Bass Chaplain podcast, go over there and listen to that. Cause me and Kyle Jesse talked about that. I said, will John Cox lead the Angler of the Year race at the end of Fork? That doesn't mean he's going to fall down to 20th, but will he be number 1? Yeah. And we both said no. And I think Clifford Perch will be the Angler of the Year leader at the end of Lake Fork, because man, he's been ever so consistent and rock solid his first 6 or 7 years on the elites. And so the last 2 seasons have been out of the norm. I know he's gone through some life changes and different things in Arizona. And, I think that he's back in his groove this year. And we're seeing the Clifford Perch we've expected all years. We're a little shocked because he's been off the radar, but this is the Clifford Perch we know and love that over the last few years. And what's dangerous is he's normally made his charge at the end of the year with smallmouth. But if he's up there near the top before we get to smallmouth, him and Brandon Polinick and some of those guys could be really duking it out in the smallmouth places.
I kind of like this because we can talk about, on the water. I can't talk about it with the anglers.
Yeah, exactly.
But last classic, we're in Fort Worth, and Clifford and I went to Lake Fork and hung out with Mark Kyle. And man, those guys were just hammers. And they looked back at me and they said, I was on the back of the boat, and they were like, hey, Chris, it's time for you to catch one. I'm like, well, I'm behind 2 vacuum cleaners. Well, Perch sneaks around behind me and catches 2 behind me, and just to rub it in on me. And so I look for him to, to may have a great tournament on this one. And I'm excited just to get back, down the Fork. I love it there. We're going to do our Christian Angler meeting at First Baptist Quitman. We kind of do like a luncheon now for them.
Yeah, it's like a
meet. They kind of come in. Yeah. So they can come in and, scarf down some pizza and listen a little bit. And so, trying to bribe them over to the Christian Angler meeting. But you know what? Couple of things I want to ask you about. All right. Number one, talk about your wife and talk about your new addition. Let's hear is Sarah from, is she from North Carolina originally?
Yes. Yeah. Sarah and I met in high school. And so I was born in Florida, lived there around the Orlando and the Harris Chain region. That you basically draw a triangle between the St. John's, Harris Chain, and Kissimmee Chain. And I'm right there, born in the middle for 5 or 6 years of my life. But then I spent the next 18 years in North Carolina. I moved around a little while, from Lake Norman over to where I ended up being in high school. And me and Sarah met. We met, she was a junior in high school and I was a senior. So I did cradle Robert just a little bit. She's only about 6 months younger than me. But I was at a weird place in my life of about to go to college in the next few months. You're a senior in high school, so you want a girlfriend really bad, but I didn't want just a girlfriend to have fun with. I wanted to have a serious starting of a relationship, and someone that I could, I'm not gonna bite the bullet unless it's someone I could think I could, marry eventually. And so Sarah was actually the one who was persistent at me. And I had just gotten out of a really weird girlfriend relationship and was like, girls are icky and I don't want to talk to you. And she's like, well, I'll be your friend. And I said, that's great. And so then I ended up asking her a few months later to prom. And a month after that, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and we have been together over 11 years now.
Wow.
And so we've been together for a long time. It makes me feel weird that she's been a part of my life for over a third of my life. So that's super cool. And we will be married 6 years in July. Wow, so we've, we spent about, all of college, we were dating, and I at no point in getting ahead of the ball too much. I after I graduated in 15, I proposed. She accepted, and after 16, she graduated, and we got married just a few months later. So it was kind of more strategic. We were in love a lot longer than that, right, but it was strategic on when we got married. And man, it's been awesome. We moved a few months after getting married from everything we knew and loved in North Carolina to Arkansas, like I mentioned. She actually moved. We got married in July. I accepted the job in December. I moved in February on her birthday. I mean, they wanted me to be there on her birthday. And I said, well, I need to be in North Carolina for that day. The next day I'll start. So I moved on her birthday. And then she didn't even come to Arkansas until June. She had a contract that she was working after graduating that she couldn't leave until June. So we spent a couple more months apart, and we learned so much about early marriage and whatnot. But and then since then she's bounced around and figuring out what she wanted to do. She went to school for athletic training, but then she started and found a passion at our church for helping others the same way athletic trainers help, except instead of physically helping them, she was helping them spiritually, and also being a huge leader of our clothing closet and food pantry at our city center, which is our nonprofit, helping needs of the community area. It's also our dental clinics there. And we also have some adult education classes there that Sarah's kind of been the ringleader of. So that's super cool. But yeah, the last few years of our marriage, we've been tested big time with, especially when COVID happened. COVID was a great opportunity to learn more about your spouse because we couldn't go nowhere.
Right,
we had to
spend time together.
And so we went through 2 miscarriages that year as trying to start a family. You go. I always like to say in high school, if I touched a girl on the shoulder, she was going to get pregnant. That's how afraid I was. That's how easy it seemed to have a baby. And then when you actually love someone and try to start a family, it's not as easy as it says. So we took a little while to get pregnant, and then both of our pregnancies in 2020 lasted 6 to 10 weeks, and that was the hardest thing to see your wife go through. Early in our marriage, there's a lot of tough things that our wives handled that we probably weren't built for sure. And so to see that, and to see her just dig into her faith more, whereas I'm getting frustrated with my personality type of wanting to try to fix and correct, and realizing like we got the best fixer in the world, and that's Jesus. He solves all. So we went through that, and 2021, after our second miscarriage, we're like, wow, we've gotten pregnant twice in 6 months, so that's after recovery times and stuff. And then it took us 6 months to get pregnant, and we were like, during that 6 months, we're like, wow, were those our 2 shots? Was that our opportunity to start a family? And the Lord provided in June, right around Ray Roberts. Who knows if it was before the Classic or after the Classic, but we ended up getting pregnant, and we just had our baby girl about a week or so after the Classic. And Miss Marlo Joy is 2 months old as of Sunday, the 15th. And so super cool. I got to tear up a little bit today. She got some 2-month-old shots. And so I was all kinds of like, what am I supposed to do as a dad?
But that's always, the first shots are always tough. Man, golly, it was so awesome.
That is cool.
When that announcement was made, you had shared that story at Brush Creek Baptist, and man, it was, we were just jumping up and down, and congratulations, man. That's
Thank
awesome.
You.
So,
hey, my greatest accomplishment. People love me for Bassmaster Live, and they're Ronnie Moore, co-host of Bassmaster Live. I am now Marlo's dad, according to everybody at church. And so that's cool. So that's super cool. My parents get to become 2-time grandparents, and her parents become first-time grandparents. So it's very cool for our families to do that. And so, you see the Lord's blessings every day in how she's learning and growing. And I honestly couldn't have, and you can speak to this as well, just being a pastor and seeing people's pain and seeing people's stories, but you never pray for tough times. You never do. You only go to the Lord for successes and for things like that. And I would never have prayed for our story to be the way it was, but Lord, I thank you every day for that testimony of our struggles and our pain, because they've led me to where we are, and the joy we can have daily. Man, my next big milestone, other than her speaking and walking, is when she understands Jesus and gets the chance to accept him. Like, that's my biggest worry now, is like, I hope I lead a life that points her to Jesus so that I can see my daughter accept the Lord. Like, that is the coolest thing.
That's
so
the
I know
thing. Evangelizing your kids is awesome.
With my wife being the mom that she is, it's a no doubter that she's going to do the right thing. It's just, I got to make sure I stay straight and narrow on emotions and keeping, now I've got a girl. I'm wrapped around her finger already for the next,
that's what every dad says
years.
that.
Oh my goodness.
My wife was a daddy's girl as well. But listen, so the segue is there for me. Now on your Facebook page, what I mentioned this in my opening before you got on. I said, man, this guy's opening deal isn't journalist. It isn't Bassmaster Live guy. It isn't Bass guy. Follower of Christ, man. You're a follower of Christ first. Tell me how you met the Lord. Tell me how you came to know Jesus.
I'm probably going to tear up a little bit. I already kind of am when you say that, because it's probably something I did. It was a gut feeling to say. That's my identity. But man, I'm not as noble as that might make me seem. And so I've been through some struggles in life, and the Lord has just drawn close to me, even when I was fully extended with my arm, like, Lord, I don't want to hear that right now. And so my story, actually, Marlo has now gone to church more in her first 2 months on this earth than I did my first 10 years of life. So I accepted Christ. It'll be 20 years November, I believe. It'll be 20 years next November. I was 9 or so. I can't exactly remember the year, but I can remember the situation. And so super cool. The church we got saved I got saved in was across a farm field from the end of our road. We saw it every day on the bus. We saw it every day. Every time we left to go to town, we'd see it, and we never walked in those doors. So the doors had to come to us. And so a program called EE, Evangelism Explosion. That was kind of my first taste of it. And it was 4 or 5 people, and it was a kid, and it was a 20-year-old, and then it was 2 people in their 30s to 40s, and it's targeted. They knew someone at that church knew us and plugged us in, because we had 2 parents in that age range. My brother was, if I was about 9 or 10, he was 16 or 17, and I was 9 or 10. So we had all the age ranges covered for their time. They came every Thursday for 3 weeks. Wow. They came one Thursday. We were in the middle of dinner, and we said, come back, hoping that they never did come back. Probably just, we were like, we'll come back later. And the next week they came back. We were in the middle of dinner again. We said, come back. The next week they came an hour later. We were finishing dinner, and they said, why don't you let us come in and we'll help you clean up? And so they came in and shared the gospel with us. And I think that night my mom and dad got saved. My brother may have gotten saved, but I was obviously of the age 9 or 10 that, it's going to take a little bit. It's going to take a couple times of saying it for me to get it. And so I will say the pastor's son was the guy that was my age on the EE trip. And so he came, and what's cool is that my current pastor taught seminary where I believe he went to school to seminary years later. And so we had one mutual friend on Facebook when I added him last year, and it was my pastor currently. And so that's really cool. But, I struggled the first year of my faith at that age. I probably rededicated my life 52 times to Christ, because once a week, there was no way that I sinned. I did not do a perfect week. I did not live a perfect week. Ain't no way I'm going to heaven. I need to do this saved thing once more. And so I did it so many times. I don't know exactly which one I meant the most, or which one wrote my name in the Lamb's Book of Life. But that was when I really started to understand the mercy and the sacrifice that Jesus had for us, because I didn't get it through my head in a world that is, what can you do to earn your way? What can you do to promote yourself? How do I make the soccer team? I've got to be better. Yet in this aspect, there's nothing I can do. other than accept a gift. And I'm like, well, if I don't have any gift to give to you, Jesus, why can I just accept this gift and you're good with it? I'm not perfect. I'm not worthy. And so it took me a little while of doing that. I watched the movie. I don't know if you know this movie. I watched the movie Omega Code, and that's an old school movie that scared the heck out of me every time I watched it, because it talks about the Antichrist. It talks about different things. It talks about all of that. And I'm like, if I'm not right with the Lord, I do not want to be here. I do not want the rapture to happen. And I'm gone. I'm sitting here and watching all my people that I know gone. And so I started to really, every time I'd watch that movie, I would learn a little more, even though it's a dramatization. And then I started to really plug in, throughout school. I actually used to get grounded from Wednesday nights because I would hang out too long at church. My parents would either be waiting, or I'd never text them to pick me up, or I'd come home late when I drove. And they used to be like, you can't go next Wednesday because you need to get in bed for school. And so
it all worked out. Too often.
No, not at all. And so it ended up working out. And, and that's just been a big staple. But I will say, I will testify that you used to think that your testimony happened the day you got saved. Right. But then I realized later in life, high school, end of high school, going into college, my testimony started the day I got saved. It was before that, because your path to lead you to salvation is a part of your story. But man, it's time to get to work the day you get saved. And so I've tried to live that. My wife, Sarah, she wasn't a follower. She had never been in church really, other than for, the Christmas and Easter. And her grandmother was an organist at their church. And so she would go just every now and then. And we met and we dated, and she was the greatest. I always say this to her. She was the greatest person I knew that wasn't going to heaven. And in college, we went to a church nearby at ECU, and she, one day, I think it was Nehemiah. It was either Jeremiah or Nehemiah. I think it was Nehemiah. And man, that lesson floored her. We would always go to lunch at Olive Garden afterwards. That was our ritual. And we talked every single Sunday after church about what she learned and different things. And to see her the day, I mean, we might have ordered extra Alfredo at Olive Garden the Sunday after she got saved. But very, very cool to see my wife come to that realization after just years of not pestering and not pressuring, but just trying to be a witness of Christ to her in different ways, to show that it is a different lifestyle at times. And so that was the second coolest, one of the second coolest moments of my life, was seeing her understand it, asked that, like, I want to go be saved, and then to see her faith sometimes be so much greater than mine in situations now. And so I couldn't ask for anything. Awesome. I couldn't ask for a better prayer partner and a companion going forward in our life, now that we have a little one to influence, every day. So that's super cool. Super cool.
That is cool. I'll tell you, one of the things we think about a lot of times is, we think about, we got to save, but we can't save anybody. Jesus has to do the saving. All we do is do the loving.
You got to plant that seed.
That's right. Yeah. We do the loving, we do the sharing, and he does the saving. And that's awesome. I love it. So let's, all right, let's move on to the anglers today, young anglers. All right. You didn't become a professional angler, but you're involved in the sport of bass fishing as much as anyone that is a professional angler is. What are some things that you see the younger guys that you could tell them, say, hey, if you just want to get better, or if you want to try to make a run at this thing, what are some things they need to be thinking about? And what are some things they need to be doing?
Two things. One that's actually probably applicable to fishing, and the other that's applicable to your mindset. No one owes you anything. You don't deserve a thing. This is the greatest sport in the world, and we're all coming together to work as hard as we can to lift this sport up. So no one deserves anything. Right. Even when you make it to the elites, you don't deserve anything. This is just an opportunity, just like I don't deserve anything. You got to work hard every day. And so if you come in there with a sense of entitlement, you're probably going to be gone after 2 years. You're going to get relegated from the elite series and have to try again and through the opens. And so act as if you have been told over and over that you're not worth it, and fish hard for that. The other thing, man, do not, if you're a high schooler or a college angler, do your best to not talk to people at lakes and get information, because there's no place that it's going to help you on the Elite Series. It's a good thing to fish with people. Go fish with people and learn how to bass fish, the basics. I fished with my dad. I fished with some of my dad's buddies. I fished by myself, fished with college partners, fished with a lot of different people to learn different tactics and the way they're doing it. I got beat yesterday by a guy at a pond throwing a 1/8 ounce jig head with a grub on it, a curly tail grub and a curly tail worm. And he caught more numbers than I did. And I caught better size than him, but he was taking me to the woodshed. So you can always learn from people in the way they would approach something by just fishing with them. But do not ask your buddies, do not ask people for information in regards to spots on how to catch fish, because I will tell you, most, if not all, the Elite Series pros are as good as they are because they don't rely on spots. They rely on patterns. So if you don't know how to break down and figure out a pattern on the run, if you don't know how to connect your first 3 bites in practice and turn it into something you can duplicate, you're going to get beat, because there's rarely, and we can say 2022 is a perfect example. Honestly, 2021 with the weather we had, and then 2020 with the fall season we had, there is not a single tournament that's going to go to plan where that one glory spot is going to pay off. So you better be able to adjust, and you do so by fishing on your own as much as possible and learning how to make a pattern happen. So those are my 2 points of things.
Man, I love that.
Go into it with an open mind, and you better approach your fishing the same way, and figure out how to create patterns rather than looking for that glorious spot, because those spots are few. You never see an elite guy win off of a spot unless it's a Tennessee River ledge, that we might see that at Pickwick. But you very rarely can lean in on your fastball and pitch it all game. You got to throw your curve. You got to throw your changeup at some point.
Man, what great advice. That's contrary to everything that you ever bring up going. That's what all those guys, hey, what did you do? What did you do? Man, what great advice. That's a deal. Well, let me tell you, come to the station. Before I do that, let's talk about Ray Scott for a minute.
Man.
I was, I met Ray. My wife and I, our first 4 vacations were to the Bassmasters Classic. I knew I'd married the right girl. She read a Kevin Van Dam spinnerbait book to me on the way home from Birmingham one time, and I was just like, it doesn't get any better than that. But Ray Scott, I got to meet Ray Scott there for the first time, and then I got to meet him later at a Fishers of Men event where I was speaking, and he was the keynote speaker. And I got a chance to share with him. But, I was thinking about this, and Jay Kumar and I were talking about it. Without Ray Scott, none of this exists. The Bass Chaplain's podcast doesn't exist without Ray Scott. I mean, how huge of a impact did Ray Scott make on Bassmaster and the world?
I didn't ever have my paths cross with Ray. I never got to meet him and shake his hand. But you can feel Ray. Yeah. You can feel Ray throughout. And I'll say the place that Ray exists the most to me. And I just thought about this, the week or so since his passing, the place that Ray will always exist. If we spread his ashes somewhere, it would be at the Classic weigh-in stage on the final day, because the grandeur, the grandeur and showmanship and love for the sport for Ray Scott, it comes out every final weigh-in at the Bassmaster Classic. And I think that goes through his whole story. I mean, watching the videos and whatnot, all the content we've put out on Ray over the years, and even content that, I look back on. I mean, he was just an insurance salesman that had a dream of, he was like, hey, every sport's on TV. Why can't we do a tournament trail for this? And then he goes, and the way I was watching the video the other day, so it's fresh on my mind, but there's a Legends and Lures video, Legend and Lure on our YouTube channel. That's one of the most recent videos we posted. And all the anglers were like, yeah, Ray Scott called me up and said, you have the skills to win this event, sign up and fish it. And then they come to find out that everyone had been told they had the skills to win it. Yeah. So he sold everyone on that dream. He is the epitome of a guy who could sell ice to an Eskimo. Epitome of that. No, and one thing, I think his biggest sale, it wasn't to a sponsor, but Ray's biggest sell was the love of fishing to so many kids that grew up. Like, he sold that. He sold the fun and excitement and passion for fishing. He sold that for years. He might not have known that's what he sold, but he sold that weigh-in classic moment. And he did so in the way he also behaved with A team and B team and getting everyone psyched up for a final weigh-in. I mean, that's what separates it from everything. I mean, when I close my eyes and I cry every single classic. I cry every classic when I think about that moment that someone took the hot seat and they're standing there, and then the last guy comes in and he grabs and he does that. I've pictured myself doing it, even though I never probably will, reaching in the live well. For one, I picture myself coming through the arena and just lights and seeing everyone around, and you can hear the roar, you hear your song, and you're like, I'm about to win the classic, or I'm about to finish second in the class. Like, this is it. There's nobody behind me in the tunnel. This is it. And when you reach in your live well and pull your bag out with your 5 fish and take it to the scales, and that moment it's on the scales and you're standing beside someone and one of you is going to win, there's no moment in sports that's like that for me. That like knee jerk, like, what would that be like? That would be crazy. So Ray is everything for the sport. A fan texted me and said we should rename the Bassmaster Classic Trophy to the Ray Scott Trophy, and I don't know what it takes to do that or who.
Right? That's a good.
But I said I think I asked Mark Menendez this the other day when I was talking to him. I said, Mark, what do we need to do to teach people about Ray Scott the next 50 years? Because if you loved fishing from its origination of sport fishing to now, the name Ray Scott, because he created this, he created bass, he's the founder, he's the bass boss, he's the guy with the cowboy hat. Everybody knows him but doesn't know about him. And that, honestly, it's terrible, but as you get older, that memory of someone fades, or the story is like the telephone game. It's not told the same way. And then it rises up and hits its peak of story time when they pass away. And then after that, it probably makes a really sharp decline on the number of mentions we have of those people. And so I said, what do we need to do over the next 50 years to teach the 6-year-olds right now about Ray Scott when they're 26 and they're on the elites? And he gave a frank, a candid story just of, you got to tell stories about Ray to do it. And so one of my favorite things, and I wasn't even there, I probably wasn't even born, when he rode the elephant into the classic arena. I think that might have been an Alabama classic. When he rode the elephant in, I mean, people would be like, why? Because it was Ray Scott. I mean, it's the classic. Why not do it? And so it's very cool. And to hear the story about catch and release, the catch weigh tournament process, and then releasing them afterwards, about how everybody, I think Rick Clunn said it. He said the only time you ever released bass back in the day was when you accidentally cut your stringer with your outboard when you took off.
That's exactly right.
He cut the line, and that's how they got away. But to see him go fishing with some trout anglers and them get so excited releasing a pitiful little trout, he knew that if we could release big bass to be caught again, that this would be huge. And then he sold everyone in the world on that. That was super cool to hear that story get retold. And then the whole thing, I mean, the whole process of the random lake for the classic. I mean, I don't know how we do it. I don't know how they pulled it off back then, getting everyone on a plane and a location and doing it. I mean, I remember when he used to, the story was like he would take off and then 100 miles into flight would circle,
turn around,
and then turn, and then so no one knew. But I don't know how we could do it nowadays, but it makes me think, how did they do it back then?
That would be cool. That's cool. Way in the tackle box where you can only have 10 pounds.
The 10-pound rule.
All that stuff.
Did you hear the Hank Parker story?
Oh yeah. He told it. He told the story on my podcast. As a matter of fact. And I
think he
told some of the great, he told the great Ray Scott stories. And, one of the things that Ray, did, it all came out of a rainy day in a hotel room. I mean, never discount a rainy day in a hotel room when he couldn't go bass fishing. It just everything. I mean, from Bass Pro Shop to everything, Ray Scott was the man, and
It's
will
weird to
always be
think.
the man.
It's weird to think that fishing is the oldest sport in the book. I mean, I was saying amen the other day in church when our pastor was talking about the stories of casting the net on the other side, and about how you are a fisherman, but from now on you will fish for men. Like that conversation Jesus had with him. So our activity of fishing is the oldest activity in the book, other than probably throwing rocks at each other. Back then that was a bad thing. But for it to be a sport just 50 years, like all the other sports, football, all the stick and ball sports were sports well before that, but that we had enjoyed this pastime, and it had lasted hundreds of years and thousands of years to get to now the formation of a sport. It took way too long to do it, but man, I'm glad Ray was the guy to do it, because no offense to anybody else who probably tried to start BASS, they might not have done it like Ray did it with the boldness. That's exactly right. That's super cool.
Even back in the day before, when they were just meat fishing, when to live, they were still competing. Everybody's like, more than you did.
My gosh. I was fishing in a farm pond yesterday, and I was mad leaving the church function at the farm pond because I lost my crown. I had won 6 times in a row, and I had to hand it over to somebody else. So now I've got new motivation for next get together.
I love it. We're coming to the time of the podcast where everybody loves. It's when I ask you to do your impression of an angler. And so now let me tell you, we've had some good ones.
Give me an example of some of them if I haven't heard them all.
I'll tell you, here's the thing. The best one so far was by a guy that's not even a professional fisherman. His name is Mark Prudhomme. He's a professional turkey caller. And it was like he was channeling Gerald Swindle. I mean, it was like
that's the easy one. Yeah.
He was absolutely. But we've had Tommy Biffle. We've had a couple of people do Edwin Evers. We've had some people do Cliff Crochet. He seems to be a popular one as well.
That makes it.
And then Hank Parker did Roland Martin. And so,
that's a good one.
And he told the origin of son, of why he started calling everybody son. And so it's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's I think that those are all really good ones, and I don't think I'm going to do good at this, unfortunately. Tommy Sanders is a great impressionist.
Tommy Sanders, yeah.
I'm trying to think of who I want to pick off. I know you had told me earlier in the thing, but I kind of obviously forgot. But I'll do one. Let me just do Stetson Blaylock, and it's going to be probably
let's
corny.
do Stetson. Yeah,
it'll be corny, but it'll be like, hey man, you catching him? Nah, man. I'm just here or there. I'm probably going to go out and 0 on day 1. It's like I don't even know how to fish anymore, and maybe I'll get lucky and catch one day 1. Maybe I'd catch one, weigh one in. But and then later on he comes in, he's in the top 10 and then the event, and
glory to God.
Yes, exactly. Stetson is a super humble guy, and he lives 15 minutes from us down the street, but he's such a humble guy, and you could see that in the Classic this year when Robbie Floyd interviewed him on the way in, and he said, I think I got the biggest bag of the tournament. I think I caught over 20 pounds, but I just don't think it's enough. Don't think it's enough. And so he had that positive mental attitude on the stage, knowing that it probably wasn't enough. And he's always a great representative of the sport. But
he is.
I can't poke fun at some of these guys. I got some ones that I really wanted to do. I've had to gloss over some names that I can't do here because they might take it to the chest if I made fun of them.
Well, they always say that when you're in that's the highest form of flattery, when you're when you're doing impressions and you're doing all impersonations and things like that. So
the other one I could do is maybe Gussie, and he's always like, "What's up, bud? What's up, bud? I like throwing a drop shot, man, for these smallmouths." And I'm like, why? When did smallmouth become plural? Because smallmouth bass are like deer. You can catch. I caught 97 smallmouth today. You never say 97 smallmouths, but everyone in Canada and Minnesota says small mouths. I'm like, where did they put they put the random S on there? I don't know.
That's Canadian. Gussie's a great guy. I got a chance to ride the boat with him one day, and we had a blast. That was awesome. Well, man,
he's a sneaky Lake Fork pick.
Oh yeah,
sneaky Lake Fork pick.
Yeah. Let me tell you, that dude, he's got the right boat for it this week too. I think he's got the good rock around,
the high sides
stuff,
exactly.
Stuff like that. So that'll be good. Well, man, I'm looking forward to this tournament, and I appreciate you being my guest here today, and just such a great role model, man. When you told the story of you and Sarah, trying to get pregnant and all the things that went into that at Brushy Creek. It was so moving and so awesome. And I appreciate you so much. I tell you, you've been such an encouragement to me and all that we do, you know, at the Bass events, Bass Elite Series events. But man, we're looking forward to more Bass Live. I don't think I can wait another day. And so I'm ready to see it. But man, thanks for being my guest. Appreciate you so much, man. It's been awesome. Good deal. Well, hey, everybody, let me tell you, this is the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. Hope you'll join us next week where faith and fishing hook up.